Hi, y'all. This is your Emerge Stronger podcast. I'm super excited today to have Michele with us. I'm Melody Oseguera, and this is Michele Humphrey, who is a very dear friend of mine. And I would say we're spiritual sisters. We definitely bonded. You helped me
Definitely.
through a very difficult time in my life, which I am forever appreciative. Really, probably the only one that stayed the course with me and said, "Hey, yeah, hang on to what you believe God has told you and don't abandon that," even when it was like all hope is lost. So, super excited to be talking to you about spiritual things, but I should tell you, I do appreciate those years that you stood by me as I walked through that. So, love you very
Ah,
much.
I love you, and it was an honor, actually an honor.
So, normally, we talk about some social science concept, right? That's typically what we talk about on our podcast. We obviously do bring God into it because God is a very big part of our lives. My story and the other people that work with It's Not Over. Yeah, we all have some type of God story in our life. So it's very
Yes.
important that we talk about this. And so today we are going to talk about triune beings and what does that actually mean. So you tell me, give me the definition of what a triune being is.
Okay, okay. Well, it basically means we are three parts. Actually, in Psalm 139, it says we're fearfully and wonderfully made, and one translation says wonderfully complex. And I think this really lends to that. We have a body, our physical body, we have a soul, and our soul is made up of three parts: our mind, our will, and emotions. And then we have our spirit, which is our eternal self that goes on into eternity. So yeah, we are wonderfully complex beings.
Mhm. And so in those situations, we just thinking about the triune being, we're very much spiritual, but we're also very much soul, or human, if we
Yeah.
want to look at it that way. And so in one of the conversations like that we've had in the past, you said, the life experiences affect us. So let's talk about that.
Mhm.
How do
Yes.
experiences affect all three areas?
Okay, well, basically, what really occurs is in our souls, that's our mind, our will, and emotions. We tend to go through different types of life experiences, whether there be really good things or really stressful things, traumas, things like that. We deal with that within our soul, and then our soul basically tells our body to react. And so our brain, which is a part of our physical body, right, begins to release chemicals. So that can also lead to all kind of sickness and illness and all kinds of things. So there's actually a book that I've been reading very slowly because it's very deep and got lots to it. But it's called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. But he talks about how trauma affects the whole being. But one quote that I love it, it's what happens in your soul happens in your cells.
Mm.
And basically meaning those traumas and those things that you've been through that are difficult basically do take effect within your soul, your with your soul, but within your cells as well. And you hold that there. And so
Amazing.
that creates all kinds of, issues, sickness, like I said, within your body.
And so a lot of times people think it's an outside that affects the inside, but really what it is the inside is affecting our outer body or our physical body. And that's because 50 to 70,000 thoughts, we have 50 to 70,000 thoughts every
Yeah,
day. 95 to 97% of those thoughts are actually subconscious thoughts, where we're not even aware. And
right.
so when we have that dialogue going over, it's like a reel of, whether it be negative thoughts or like focusing on what somebody did to you or whatever, it's on
Yeah.
repeat subconscious brain. And therefore it then affects our body. And we don't realize that. I mean, people, having bitterness or unforgiveness has been linked to people having cancer and
Yeah.
all kinds of things. So definitely the body keeps the score. Love that book. Have always loved the book because it is
Mm-hmm.
I agree. You do have to read it slowly because you're like, wait, what? Anyway,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, totally
yeah,
agree
yeah.
about that. So let's talk about how it affects us spiritually.
Okay. Well, the beautiful thing is when you are a believer in Christ and a follower of Christ, he comes in, and completely makes us new,
Mm.
is what the Bible tells. And so when you have salvation, that belief in Jesus Christ, and you begin that relationship with him, your spirit is immediately made brand new. However, your soul does play a part in what you think about. And so if you're feeding your soul more than you're feeding your spirit gets quiet. It doesn't get really loud. Whereas if you quit feeding your physical body, your body gets loud, your stomach growls, all that kind of stuff. Well, your soul kind of does the same thing. It wants attention.
Mm.
And so it kind of depends on which one you're feeding. But yeah, did I answer that? I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, you did. When you were saying that, one of the thoughts that I had is I remember when I was young wanting to do the right thing, but often found myself doing the wrong thing, like because Paul says, what I want to do, I don't do, and the things I don't want to do, I do, right? And
Right, right.
I remember being caught in that cycle and just like praying, Lord, please help, please take the desires away. Please, the things that I know I shouldn't do, like, please take those desires away. And being frustrated with myself and maybe even sometimes God because it did not work like that way.
Yeah.
It worked through what we call the sanctification process, which
Yeah.
the feeding of the spirit through the word, through worship, through praise, small groups, going to church, feeding that
Mhm.
spiritual side. But I remember one day sitting in the word and reading something, and like the Holy Spirit reminded me, remember that thing that you prayed for a long time for me to take away? It's no longer there. Now, listen, there are still things that I pray. Oh, Lord Jesus, help,
Yeah.
please take this away.
Yes.
Even
Yes. Me
today,
too.
at 50 years old, I still, have that. And so I'm continuing on in that sanctification
Yeah.
process. But, it does go down to what are you feeding? Are you feeding your soul? Are you scrolling on social media all the time? Are you
Right.
binging Netflix or whatever all the time? Or are you sitting and spending time with God?
Right.
And, it's not necessarily about the quantity of time, but it's the quality of time that you spend with God, because God does not, he transcends time, right? And God can do something with just a
Yeah.
couple of scriptures, and it doesn't necessarily have to mean hours and hours and hours. Although
Right.
the more time you spend, the more you're sanctified, right? The more time you
Yeah.
spend by his word, you're sanctified. So anyway,
Right.
it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, that there's a book that I've read about soul care, which I just love. But he says it like this. I'm trying to see the quote exactly. Life change is an interactive, roll up your sleeves and get messy process. Truly, it is a journey. But here's the beautiful thing is in John 10:10, we learn that the thief, the devil, comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But it says, Jesus actually says, but I have come that you may have life and have it more abundantly.
Mhm.
And he's talking about the fullness of triune being, abundant life in all areas. So in your body, in your spirit to be stronger, just like you said, and in your soul for those things that you've been through to get healed. He wants all those things, but the thing is, like you said, it takes effort. We have to be intentional. You have to make those, like with for body, you have to exercise, you have to eat. Your body was made to move, so you've got to do all of those things. You got to eat correctly. You have to sleep. That's one of the biggest ones people don't do because they don't think they need it. But you have to do all those things to stay healthy, and just like you said, feeding your spirit is so vital. And then your soul as well. That's one of the over the past, oh goodness, a few years for me, the self-awareness thing and realizing the lack of self-awareness,
Mhm.
truly. So many things that I didn't realize what those feelings were and why I felt them.
Mhm.
Actually, you've helped me with some of those things.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, you
reciprocal
have.
here. Like we
Yeah,
reciprocate a lot. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, it started there. For sure with the self-awareness thing. So, but yeah, learning. There's a lot of things. One thing that I keep saying to myself is, you don't know what you don't know, and
Mhm.
so you have to ask the Lord for help with that. Invite Him into the messy process and ask
Mhm.
for help to see
Mhm.
yourself as He sees you, but also as you really are. And those things, those areas that need to be changed. But, getting outside help is also so
Yeah.
vital.
I was just about to say,
Um,
you're surrounding yourself with wise counsel. And when I was going through my crisis, I remember like purposely shutting people off, not to cut them out of my life,
yeah,
um, but people that want to weigh in. And sometimes that's, when you have friends or family weigh into your situation, they too have a bias because they love you and they don't
right.
want you to hurt. And it hurts them to see you hurt, right?
Hmm.
But when you and I connected, which was through a small group at church, I mean, we were introduced by my mom, right? But through a
Right,
small church,
right.
that's really began to connect. I knew that you were a wise person and that you would say it's not about my feelings, it's what does the word say, or what is God saying to you in this moment. If God is saying that to you, and that's what you follow, you don't follow your feelings. And so it's so important to have that wise counsel around you, which was what you were there for me. And literally, I don't think there was another soul that kept saying, Melody, push forward, like keep doing what God said, keep doing what God said.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else jumped ship, which I get it, and
Hmm.
may have done that a few times and with different people that I love as well. I understand that part. But hanging on to what God
Yeah.
says and believing God for, the transformation or whatever is important. So let me ask you this. What would you say to somebody, and you did kind of already touch on it already, but somebody that's like, I don't even know how to be self-aware. What are like a couple of things that you would tell them to do to help them become more self-aware?
Hmm. Okay. Curveball a little bit.
Sorry.
Good. No, good question. Good question. Yeah, I definitely think having non-biased help and sharing your story, sharing what you've been through, sharing those things. I think journaling is so vital because I think when you journal what you're going through, be honest about your emotions. That is, man, that is, oh my golly.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that I have learned over the past couple of years is how I have pushed down emotions in an effort to just do the godly thing.
Right. Hmm.
And no, your emotions aren't to lead, but you also have to give them space
Right.
and understand them. And so I that is one of the things, I think journaling has brought out for me. I ask as I ask, why am I feeling this way? I'm listening to my body when I begin to feel anxious. I never really thought of myself as a person that would get anxiety, but I'm recognizing in my body, a tightness in my chest when certain things happen that trigger, and really beginning to acknowledge, okay, why am I feeling that right now?
Hmm.
And that's where, truly, as I said, inviting Lord into that. I'm asking Him, okay, Lord, right now I feel this tightness in my chest. I'm feeling nauseous. Whatever those feelings are, I don't know what's going on, and I don't understand. This has occurred. What exactly is going on? And honestly, within that deep place, there's like a whisper. It's like you feel right now. Well, why am I feeling fear? And I go through and He, helps, He shows it.
Hmm.
But then acknowledging, okay, these are real things. These
Hmm.
are exactly what's going on. Doesn't mean I think a part of me felt like, I don't know, there was a lack of faith or something like that. I don't know. If I didn't just overcome it immediately on my own kind of
Right.
thing,
So
just
it
had to be
became very
stronger.
self-critical, like suck it
Oh
up,
yeah.
Michelle. Come on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. So I think those, and then having people that can speak into your life and you can say, okay, you can blow up or you can really express all that you're feeling and then being willing to hear truth, and sometimes that's hard, so,
It
well,
is
this is what
hard.
you're.
Yeah, I was reading somebody post something today on LinkedIn, and it was like something about constructive criticism, and somebody else came back and said, we call it constructive feedback now. Well, whatever we call it, it's important that we are open. Like, if we really want to change, if we really want healing, if we really want to achieve the goals that God has out for us, we have to be willing to recognize that sometimes we're the villain.
Mhm,
Sometimes we have things we need to change. And I remember one point in time, and I've said this on some of the episodes before, that I had a coach and I was talking to him, and he told me that I was cold, and it made me mad. And
mhm,
I'm not calling him again. I'm not cold. But I had to really like sit with it and be like,
mhm,
oh, I can be critical and I can be cold, and that does not serve me well. I mean, that's definitely not how Jesus would want us to act.
mhm,
But I had to sit with that. But it was a good thing, and try. So now I try not to be that way, although sometimes it creeps up, where I can be kind of cold, and I want that, but you know, wrestling with that. Like, if you have trusted people in your life,
mhm,
then I don't think you should wrestle with, like really take it. And you don't have to just go to one person. It could be a couple of people that hey, do you see this in me? Is this
mhm,
true? And when you operate like that, man, it when you just accept your flaws, and
mhm,
recognize that you have things that you need to change, it really does open up. I think it unties God's hands in a sense. Okay, so now you've come to terms
yeah,
with it. You've accepted that, and now I can actually work in and through you, because you've
mhm,
accepted, or you've become
mhm,
self-aware. You've
right,
accepted that, yeah, you don't have it all figured out.
yeah, yeah, well, and doesn't the Bible say, "In our weakness, his
Mm, yep.
he's his what is his strength is made perfect," even, I think one version says, right? I mean, just like you said, acknowledging those weaknesses. But man, that's so hard, isn't it? Oh man. But
Mhm.
yes, it's also freeing when you do, realizing the areas that I felt so, really authentic. I don't try and put on any kind of facade or anything like that. But man, I realized, there are still some areas that I'm trying to, still whatever, put
Surrender.
that.
That's the thing, the
y-
word surrender
Yeah,
to God. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Okay.
But
So
what
I
else?
know that when we begin to recognize that there are things in ourselves that need to change, one of the things that happens is we try to isolate,
Mm,
right?
yes,
And that's
yeah,
exactly where the devil wants us. He wants us
yep,
alone. He wants us in our negative thoughts, whether it be, negative thoughts about other people or negative thoughts about ourselves. He wants us in that place. And social science says when we are in that place of self-protection or self-preservation or even self-promotion, which both are rooted in pride, by the way,
hmm,
we're
yep,
back here in the amygdala in the reptilian brain. And when we're back here, it actually closes down the prefrontal cortex, which is where the creativity
yeah,
happens, right? And we
right,
begin to
right,
imagine, become co-authors with God when we are in, our co-creators with God when we are in that prefrontal cortex. But when we're in that amygdala, we
yeah.
can't be there. So talk about the importance of community, the importance of connection to help with that.
Well, yes. Well, I mean, Bible's a good source to go to. So, what Genesis, Ecclesiastes, Amos, Proverbs, all speak to the need for community. That we really, really, really need to stay in touch with other people because, yes, in isolations, you get in your own head, you come up with a million different assumptions, a million different conversations that you can have. My goodness, I used to do this when I'd be take a shower in the evening. I'd be all kinds of crazy
Mhm.
conversations going on in my, and it just that isolation, and before I know it, my body's reacting to those fake conversations that
Right.
haven't even happened, and my body's reacting because I'm feeling the stress, I'm getting angry, I'm already thinking about comebacks because, man, you want a
Yeah.
good comeback,
Mhm.
you know? So
I
all
must
those
win
things.
this argument.
Exactly, and it's all just been in my head,
Mhm.
and so, yeah, that's the it's so vital to stay amongst people that you can trust that are gonna speak truth. That's the hardest thing, is finding that circle, because people care and they want to say what they think you wanna hear, and so finding people that are gonna speak truth to you is vital, very vital. And what's the other thing? There was another thing that I was going to say about that. Oh, staying out of the secret life. That's one of the biggest things that holds people back, because then you create shame. When you go into isolation, you get into, typically you're reacting, your body's reacting, then typically you may start choosing some unhealthy behaviors,
Mhm.
whether it's alcohol, drugs, pornography, whatever those unhealthy behaviors are, in isolation, because you think, okay, well, convince yourself that, it's all, nobody else needs to know, it's not hurting anybody else, and all of those things, when in actuality, it affects every relationship that
Yep.
you're in. So it's so, that staying in community. Dr. Rob Reimer talks about living what he calls a confessional lifestyle.
Mhm.
And I so agree how important this is, because, well, I mean, there are scriptures that talk about healing for the body and the soul comes within confessing one to another. We get forgiveness of sin, confessing to God,
Mhm.
but we get healing of our body and our soul when we're confessing one to another.
Mhm.
So, finding those people that you can confess, okay, this is happening. I'm really ticked off about it, or whatever it is that you need to confess, or I'm really struggling with this temptation to drink, or to have this relationship, or whatever that is. Those confessions basically hinder shame from
Mhm.
really taking root
Yeah.
in your life, which then, of course, leads to healing, just like the
Right.
Bible says.
Our
When
secret
you,
keep us sick for sure.
yeah,
Mhm.
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So there
So,
was a study that Gary Brecka talks about, and he's a, a doctor that I don't know what his specific practice was on, but he used to work for insurance companies and all that kind of stuff. And he says that the one thing that you can't hide is true authenticity.
yeah,
That we actually send out a certain frequency with authenticity, and people are attracted to that. And that's a lot of times when people start working on themselves, when they work on themselves and the body, mind, heart, spirit, they start making changes, they become self-aware, they have the connections, they have wise people talking into their lives, and you really see changes in their lives. Those people become so attractive, like it's like they glow, and it's because they're authentic. But when somebody is trying to be something that they're not, right, trying to hide, pretend, and even sometimes it's because of shame, they are not sending that out. And so you begin, like, even in you send out a frequency of, hey, I'm closed off, hey, isolate, like you can't trust me, like you send off those frequencies. So I know a lot of people talk about energy and all that kind of stuff, and I'm not here to talk about all that, but I am saying that people know you're known by your fruits, right? You're known.
mm,
And when you are doing the right things, when you're being transparent, when you're owning the things that you've done wrong, you're confessing those things, it creates the environment of authenticity. And
mhm,
that is when you can really begin to impact not only your life, but the kingdom. And
yes,
we're created for a purpose, and the devil tries so hard to get us caught up in what somebody else did to me, or,
Yeah.
oh, I made this terrible decision. Well, guess what? Everybody
Mhm.
has made some type of terrible decision, and everybody's been affected by somebody else's terrible decision. So like it just happens, and we can choose to allow those things to keep us frozen in time, right? And literally allow the devil, like you said, still kill and destroy, rob us from fulfilling the purpose that God has called us to fulfill. It's one of the
Yeah.
things I pray every morning. Lord, I cast down every thought that would create the environment where well, any vain thought, but also that would keep me from fulfilling the purpose,
Yeah.
whether it
Mhm.
a feeling about myself, or a feeling about somebody else, or a reading or a misreading of some type of interaction, right? Because a lot of times, because of our pain, we have this lens that is clouded by
Yeah.
our past experiences. And when we
Right.
allow God to come in, he begins to clean that lens. And that's another
Yeah.
reason why it's good to have. I had a conversation with a person earlier today talking about, like, is this really how it is? Or is this just the way that you're seeing it?
Mm.
And the way that you're seeing it is because of the pain that you've experienced in the past. And I understand that we
Yeah.
have to be aware, like if somebody has mistreated us in the past, we don't just, I'm not saying that we forgive them, but we still have to go be wise when we go back into that relationship. I
Mhm.
understand. But if that person's behavior has changed,
Mhm.
you're still allowing the pain from the past to cloud the lens, so you can't really see the truth of that change. And so I know it's scary to be vulnerable. I know it's scary to forgive, but as much people will hang on to pain because they think it protects them from any further pain, right? They
Mhm.
choose not to forgive because they think it's going to protect them. And actually, it's doing the opposite.
It does, right.
So, talk about that.
Okay, so I think all a part of that, it does have to do with your emotions, obviously, and all of that basically leads to when you have unforgiveness, your body actually holds that in. Your brain actually then produces chemicals
Mhm.
that create all kinds of actual sickness. They actually now can actually show on brain scans a thought and how those thoughts actually do release poisonous chemicals into the body that
Yeah.
can cause cancer, that can cause autoimmune diseases and things like that. So those things are all very, very real things. But it also, just like you said, it hinders you from moving forward in relationships because it is self protecting. And trust me, I deal with this a lot. I am still working on allowing myself to be vulnerable, even with people I trust. I recognize that I have just trying to self protect, trying to protect my heart from being hurt, and vulnerability, definitely exposes your heart. And so taking it one time, one day at a time, and thankfully I've got, my family are understanding when I do that thing that pushes away because I want to, get out of the situation because I realize it's getting too close and it's starting to hurt. And I don't mean that something bad has happened. I mean, even when there's a moment of real intimacy as
Mhm.
far as with my daughter and talking about her, caring for me, and I begin to feel exposed.
Right.
I don't
And
know. I
the
guess that's what.
vulnerability, and it's a little
Yeah.
scary. Yeah.
Yes. And so I then start pulling back, and but inside, that I was explaining this to my daughter. Inside, I am screaming, "Don't do this, Michelle.
Mhm.
Stick with it. Stay here. Let let her love on you and be your strength right now."
Mhm.
And at the same time, like just like it's
Yeah.
something, and it does have to do with all of those things that you've been through
Mm,
those difficult places. And there's so many things that we go through.
mm,
And I think, like I said, that first recognizing that those were valid things,
mm,
which I think was a big part of what I wasn't doing.
yeah.
Um, but I yeah,
One of the things that I think that I have struggled with is feeling like I had to be the strong one. I wasn't
yes,
allowed to be sad. I wasn't allowed to cry. Now, by nature, I really just don't cry. Like David tells me, man, he calls me Kusuko. Come on, Kusuko. You're so like hard and all that kind of thing. I think I'm a little conditioned because I'm used to hearing hard things from people and what they're going through and all of that. And
yeah,
as a coach, you hear people's hard stories. But I even before I was a coach, I remember like holding myself back. I'm not gonna cry. I'm
hmm
not gonna be the weak one. I'm gonna act like it doesn't bother me, or I'm going to act like I'm some strong Christian, I'm not affected by that, which
hmm
all of that is pride. Every single bit of that is pride.
yes,
And, I don't struggle with it as much as I used to, but I still struggle with that sometimes, like I'm unaffected by, the actions of some other person or the devil in general. And, like I'm some strong Christian and I have to break that down in myself and just like you said, like be vulnerable with. I'm not saying that you cast your pearls before swine. I'm not saying that you
right,
tell everybody
right,
your abilities because somebody might use it against you, whatever. But if it's
hmm
a trusted person, hey, I'm struggling with this, or hey,
hmm
this really did hurt me. And the more I do that with trusted people, obviously, the more like I'm free from it,
hmm
the more I'm
yeah,
vulnerable. So like I understand that experience and even feeling like, come on, Melody, like this is a good moment, like truly be vulnerable, truly be who you are. But it is scary as all get out
hmm
sometimes. It is.
it's very scary. It's very scary. Vulnerability is scary, but yeah, it's also very rewarding when you reach that with those relationships, because there's just a closeness and a beauty that comes from it, and health.
Yeah.
It's healthy for your whole triune being, basically. But yeah, it is all. But yeah, those things like forgiveness and those things, those are all choices. We always have those choices to make. You can choose to forgive. It doesn't mean that there's that reconciliation, that you're saying that what they did was okay. It doesn't mean any of that. It's just the choice that you're not going to allow that thing to
Mhm,
create bitterness and to hold you back from
mhm,
the life of abundance. And it will. The Bible talks specifically about forgiveness and the importance of forgiving those, or we don't get forgiven.
right.
So,
So if somebody came to you and said, how how do I heal my soul? Like, is it that I just let my spirit take over, or like what are some really good steps that would help me heal those broken places in my life? Which I know we're talking about, we're three-part beings and all that kind of stuff, but we
mhm,
know that we operate a lot in the soul
mhm,
because we're soul and we're spirit. I mean, we are body too, and that's
mhm,
important. But I'm with you. I believe that our soul affects our body so much, and there's that
mhm.
war between the soul and the spirit. If you were to give some advice to somebody that is warring with that, what would you tell them? What are a few steps that they could take to help them move more into the spiritual so that it can transform their lives?
Right. Okay. I think to start with, and I talk about this, as I'm very passionate about this, is what you're thinking about.
Right.
That is a part of your soul. That's your mind. Those are your thought processes. What you continue to meditate on daily is, and if you're choosing to scroll through social media for hours on end, you're placing those thoughts, and those things that you think on. You see somebody's doing well, and so you think everything's perfect in their life, and so you begin to go down all the things about you
Mhm.
don't have, and
Yeah.
because you're not thin, and all of that kind of stuff. So
I just
what
want
do
to
you think
put a
about?
plug. I want to put a plug to Paul again. Really, it's the Holy Spirit. In Philippians 4:8, it says, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are
Yeah,
honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things." There are reasons why the Lord tells us those
yeah,
things, because
yeah.
they're actually good for our neural pathways, by the way. Like it does, like you said,
Right.
chemicals are released
Yeah,
into our bodies. Are, when we're thinking on these healthy things, then our neuro pathways are like budding like trees. And if we're thinking on the negative stuff, they're literally breaking and breaking off, and they look like dead trees.
yeah.
There's
Hmm.
I just wanted to plug that. So go ahead. What are the other things?
Yeah. Well, the other thing is take note of what you're meditating on and those fake conversations that you're having, and then your will is your choices. What your determination is. If you want life change, you have to be determined.
Mhm.
So whatever that requires, if you need to put notes up all around the house about what God says and what you need to think about, then do that. Definitely making your mind up, but that's where it always is going to start is that will to, okay, I want change. I don't like broken relationships over and over in my life. I don't like these unhealthy behaviors. I want change. And so making your mind up, I think what's great with that is getting accountability with that, whether it's exercise and that kind of thing, or if it's growing spiritually, that sort of thing. Having an accountability partner, I think, is so vital and so very, very helpful. Then, of course, for the emotional aspect of things is not repressing emotions, but feeling them, acknowledging what they are, what they're about, um, and then surrendering those emotions. Not allowing those emotions to lead your life, which I think is where people get stuck a lot of times.
You said earlier about journaling, which was also something that was very
Yes.
important in my life, and like truly getting real in the journal, and not trying to say the things to God, because that's who I journaled to. It was like, dear, I was writing
Yeah.
it this letter to God. This is how I feel.
Yeah.
And like some days it'd be like, Lord, I worship you, I praise you. You're amazing, and I can see your hand working. And other days it would be like, this sucks. He's being a
Yeah.
stinker, and I didn't say stinker.
Yeah.
I was completely real, like, Lord, this is how I feel, and yeah, you know what? I know that this is not good for me, but this is where I'm at right now. And
Yeah.
that's the goodness of God, because God, He loves us and He meets us where we're at, but He
Hmm.
also loves us too much to leave us where we're at. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
I I often, like, I see Jesus like coming alongside of me, like literally meeting me in the trenches, or in the ditch, in the muck, in the
Hmm.
mire, and saying,
Yeah.
"Baby, I love you exactly how you are at this moment, right?
Hmm.
In the pig pen, after
Right.
you've squandered your life, and all that kind of stuff. You're squandered your life, squandered your, like, I go to the prodigal son's story, and then I see him saying, "But I love you too much. Like, I gave my life for you. That's how precious you are to me." I get emotional even thinking about it. I said
Hmm.
it, but that might happen in this episode. Anyway, yeah, I love you. I love you so much to let you stay here.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you did that yucky stuff. You thought those yucky thoughts. That's not who you are.
Hmm.
You're, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Going back to the beginning of the episode,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
You are
Right.
the head, not the tail. You are the righteousness of God in Christ. You're a royal priesthood, a holy nation. All those are scriptures. So if you are not a Christian and want to say, what? Go Google those scriptures. You're a royal priesthood, you're a holy nation.
Hmm. Yeah.
I
That
want
that all has to do with identity.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Which I think was the other thing is learning your who God says you are, your identity, because it's always different from what you think about yourself.
And how many times have I said, "Me, God? Like, you love me that much? I don't know
Yeah.
why. I've done this and this and this and this, and all these things, you
Right.
know." And He's like, "Yep, I sure do.
Yeah.
I love the thing that Jamie Winship talks about, and I do this quite often, especially when I'm feeling bad about myself, about exchanging those things with Jesus, like the negative things that you think about yourself and the
Mhm.
lies heard from the devil, or maybe even negative things that people have told you about yourself. And I remember in my kitchen walking through this because I had heard him say it to do this a lot of times. I'm like, yeah, okay. My pride would not let me do it. I'm good. I don't, all that kind of thing. I have healed. I have done all the right things. But I remember in this moment, particular time in my life, just exchanging that, like saying, okay, Lord, this is how I see myself, this and this and this, like envisioning myself giving all those negative things to Jesus. And then watching what Jesus did with those things. Now, I'm not going to tell what I saw Jesus do because I don't want to influence somebody else, but seeing what Jesus did. And then Jamie Winship will say, okay, now ask the Lord what he thinks about you. Or first, what did you see Jesus do? Did Jesus say, you dirty little girl, you did this and this and this?
Yeah.
No, I didn't envision that. And then he says, ask Jesus to tell you what he thinks. And man, like I just broke down in tears. Like I like doubled over in tears, and that is so outside of
Yeah.
my my comfort zone for one, but that's so out of my personality style because I tend to not be more of an emotional person. I tend to be more logical. And so like man, it really impacted me. And that was like the beginning of me really seeing myself the way the Lord sees me.
Mhm.
I say it was the beginning. It probably wasn't the beginning, but it catapulted me to the next level.
Mhm.
I don't think I have arrived in any way. I don't think I'm better than anybody else in any kind of way, but it was something that I needed for myself in that time where the Lord like really spoke to me and showed me, and it was transformational.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
It's
heard
growth.
Jamie Winship, by the way. You told me about it.
He's he's the best. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, meditation, journaling and all that.
Journaling.
Uh,
Yeah.
is there any
Finding creative things too. One thing I've started doing is painting. I'm enjoying, watercolor and acrylic. Doing finding something outside. It's just bringing the creative aspect of things. That's therapeutic, walking, definitely filling your space with good positive. I listen to podcasts and that are encouraging and typically teaching because that helps me move forward thinking.
right?
So those are some other things.
Yeah. And the only other thing that I would add is the surrender part, like
Oh yeah.
surrendering those things that need to be surrendered, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? Just saying, okay, God,
Yeah.
I know these things are not serving me, so help me. And he will. But sometimes it's a light switch, right? Sometimes we have that Damascus Road experience,
Hmm.
but most times it's through the sanctification process by putting the
Hmm.
good things in and all of that. Okay.
Yeah.
I could go on and on and on and on and on talking about this specifically with you because we've had many, many conversations with
Yes.
both like, oh yeah, that's so good and all the things of the word. And this won't be the last conversation, but I do want to say this. If you are struggling, in your soul or in other ways, I know that you specifically are mental health certified. So why don't you tell us what certifications do you have that can help you? I know you work at a pregnancy crisis center. You also
Right.
work not over as a coach, and I'll plug you in a second. But talk about your certifications.
A mental health coach and life coach, both certifications through Light University. So yes. And,
Okay.
and of course, I mean, I had the physical stuff too. I mean, I used to teach
Oh
and train and
yeah,
do all the physical stuff too. But yeah.
yeah. Maybe I need to we need to join that Crunch Fitness so you can train me.
Yeah.
Like, hey, sister, you can do more weights than that, or
Yeah.
a little longer on the treadmill, whatever. Yeah, I forgot about you doing that, but yeah, you did do that. Okay,
Yeah, I did.
so if you need help, if you need somebody to walk with you through whatever crisis, and there's crises all over the place, It could be, some type of loss. It could be marriage. It could be I'm struggling, like failure to launch, or, I'm just struggling in my life because of some decisions I've made or whatever. Michele is a coach with It's Not Over, and she has availability. So go to itsnotover.net. I'm going to tell you, like, Michele was, like I said earlier in the episode, that was the only one that continued to push me towards the mark of the high calling, right? Like putting my emotions aside. You were really good about that. And then, yep, but what does God say? Yep, what does God say? And listen, you may not be a believing person, and that's okay. You can have goals, and Michele can help you get those goals. I am going to be honest. She's going to say, suck it up, buttercup, which is why I love her. That's my style. I needed to hear that many times, and, and all that. So I appreciate you for that. So go to itsnotover.net, click on book here, and scroll down to Michele's name. Thank you so much for doing this. It won't be the last for sure, because like all things Jesus, we both love, and I love talking to you about those things.
I enjoy it. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
for making it easy too. I
Oh,
appreciate it.
awesome. Until next time, my friend.
Thank you for listening to the Emerge Stronger podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you would like to connect with one of our coaches or find out more about group coaching, please visit our website at itsnotover.net. Please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and also share it with your friends and family. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.